Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup. We're your hosts, Ellen Feldman Ornato
and Jenny Drescher. We're talking with dynamic women from across the manufacturing scene in Connecticut. Hey, friends out there in listener land, when was the last time you took stock of a win? Oh, no, I don't just mean, oh, that went well. I mean, really took stock and pulled that thing apart and looked at it piece by piece. Welcome to the Shakeup, my friends. Hey, Ellen, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And you know what? With that thing that you just mentioned at the opening is something that I think that I'm guilty of all the time. Like I just sprint past the finish line of one thing and I just go right on to the next thing. Sometimes I don't even take a breath, get up, get a glass of water, and I'm on to the next thing.
That's very bad for your bladder too, by the way. Like, you gotta get the water, pee, take a breath before you keep moving on to the next thing.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things that we've done particularly well this year that we want to share with our listeners is the whole notion of slowing down and taking stock, of really grounding yourself in the wins that you've had and understanding that it wasn't just a win, it was a series of decisions and behaviors and ways of being that allowed you to get to where you were successfully.
So what was one of those for you, Elle? Like, what was a win for you this year that you think about now as we're rounding down to 2024?
We are in conversation with a strategic partner to create something very new in the marketplace. And that the culmination of that and the current piece of that, I will consider a win because that first conversation started well over a year ago at a networking event. So, that whole like building from a networking event and a first conversation to the point where we're almost ready to get something new into the marketplace is for me a win. Big win.
So I'm gonna probe, and while I probe, friends out in listener land, I'm gonna just signpost. Yep, breaking our fourth wall again. I'm gonna interview Ellen in a very particular way right now, and I want you to listen to the way I'm doing it because there's gonna be a test at the end, and you're gonna have to send us a report. No, I'm just kidding, but listen carefully to some of the questions that I ask, because you can ask these same questions of yourself or your colleagues or your spouses, your kids, or anybody in your world to help you really get a sense of pulling a win apart and recognizing how you got there. So, Ellen, I hear this win. I'm excited for you. Well, I mean, full disclosure, I'm excited for me too. As at Boulder Company, I'm excited for us. But like, what did you do? Like, what were some of the action steps that led you to this place where you're positioned to launch a new offering into the market?
So the first thing I think is I showed up. Very often, we are hesitant to go to networking events. This is an organization that I'd never been to before. It was down on the shoreline, so that was a different place. And I tend to be up in the Hartford area more. And so I sort of pushed past my own, I don't want to go out. And I got there and showed up with a lot of energy and met somebody just casually over hors d'oeuvres. And we started talking about life in general. We didn't start talking about doing a project together. So I used all of my own networking best efforts to create a relationship where I hadn't had one before.
So I hear a lot packed into that. So I hear, one, you just showed up, but I hear, two, you also overcame your own inertia. Right. I'm just going to stay home. And I also heard you calling upon like innate skills that you have. And I'm curious about the overcoming inertia part, because that's something that I sometimes struggle with too when it comes to getting out and showing up. What specifically did you do to overcome the inertia? Like on a cold winter night, I don't want to go out and go down to the shore. Like, how did you get yourself to get your ass out of the house?
Well, one of the things that I did was I set enough time in my calendar in the afternoon to allow for me to actually get ready to go. so that I
Mm.
wasn't getting up from a thing and then rushing out the door. I actually created space to intentionally get ready. I remember I laid out my clothes in the morning so I knew what I was going to wear. So I didn't have to get into that, how should I dress for this? I had already decided. So I sort of took my own obstacles out of the way and then, figured out midday how long it was going to take me to get there so that I felt like I was giving myself enough of a buffer to get there at the right time, not too early, not too deep into the event, so that I felt like it was a comfortable window to walk in.
Oh, so there's a little bit of pre-planning there. So you
Mhm.
sort of looked at your day and you said, instead, like this is like to me, this is the gold nugget I'm taking from the success you caused here. You looked at it, you did a little pre-planning, but you really were looking at this. The sense I get, push back at me if I'm wrong, is that you really looked at this from an energy management position. Like the mindset I hear you describing, that's how that lands with me is
Mhm.
what is my time going to look like? What do I not want to do? I want to not run out the door. I want to not show up at the event panting. I want to not compress my day so much and my time and my energy that I actually work against myself. I mean, is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be able to get there energized and available instead of depleted and running, with my tongue dragging on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
I set myself up for success by giving myself enough time to do the things I needed to do and
Yep.
planning that well in advance and not allowing the rest of the day to creep into that buffer that I set up for myself.
I love that. I love that. And I'm wondering if I pick that thread up, what was the positive impact on you because you chose this specific approach in how you were going to pursue some of these events? Or it almost sounds like this was a particular event that helped you to build the path to where we are now with this. I mean, all the way from meeting this person to product launch over a year later.
Right.
I realize that's the scope of what we're talking about, but it sounds like you remember meeting this person at this event. So
Mhm.
that particular day, you made a plan, you managed your energy. What was the positive impact for you immediately that day or that week of having taken that approach?
I felt great about the event. This person wasn't the only person that I met at the event. Um, And I felt like I walked in ready to meet people, ready to create new relationships, create conversations. So it was a networking success, which is a big part of my job for our organization, is to go out and make sure that those networking events are successful and that I'm meeting people. And so I achieved my goal there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to go to networking events and to be present with the people who are there instead of sort of dragging in all of the energy of the day with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
something that we share with our listeners. I know many of them are hesitant at times to go to networking events. Others love going to networking events, but it's always just mind your own energy, just noticing. And I think I did that particularly well that day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that for you. And just one more last question about this. Um, what was the positive impact on other people just out of that one particular day? I mean, obviously we know a lot of positive impacts came from it as a subsequent series of actions, but just that one networking event and maybe that week, what were the positive? You've identified the positive impacts on you. What do you think the positive impacts were on, say, your team or other people in your world or your family or whoever?
Well, certainly for our team, I put a new person into our sphere of network and we came home and set up a meeting so that our whole team could meet this person, which
Hmm.
led to a series of additional meetings with this person and the development of a relationship and the building of trust that now has us in the position that we're in. So coming out of it, it wasn't just that I met this person and I came to it with a very grounded energy where I wasn't selling anything or just was really trying to meet people. That because I met him that way, there was an energetic connection that has carried through to today of just really liking someone else and wanting to figure out how to play together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for letting me kind of dig into your brain a little bit, Elle, on that one.
Welcome.
So, friends, you may have noticed, hopefully you were listening to the questions I was asking, and hopefully you could hear in the way that Ellen was just sharing her story, sharing her experience, you might have picked up on a couple of key things about the way we surfaced what she did to cause that success. So there were a couple of things. One, we didn't leave it at the big picture of the whole scene and, oh my God, here's how we caused this giant success this year. We actually drilled it down to a specific moment in time. So that was one piece of what we did to get at that. So we drilled down to a specific moment in time. We drilled down to what were the actual actions and attitudes and behaviors that Ellen was displaying in that one day, that one snapshot in time that allowed her to cause some success that felt really good for her. Like you could hear it in her voice. She felt grounded. She felt open. She was connected with other people and had ease in it. And then it also led to other things. And she identified actions, attitudes, behaviors. She identified a positive impact on herself and a positive impact on her team. So what you've just heard in that series of questions and the results that we got from those questions was a very specific process. We learned it from our friend Brian Fretwell of Finding Good, and it's called personal success cause mapping. So what we just did was we had Ellen, through a series of questions, really map out, how did I cause this success for myself and for my team? So Ellen, knowing that you knew full well that that was what we were going to work on today, but what I want to know from you, and this is like a fancy next step for those of you who might try on some of these questions with someone. Ellen, how do you feel now, having articulated that success to me through this conversation?
I love that you asked that question, because here's what I know about the work that we do with Brian and the work that we do with the folks that we work with in our client engagements is that activates a very specific part of my brain, and I feel good. Right? That action of celebrating a win, of really owning the success that's involved in that win, makes me feel good. From the brain science nerds that we are, we know that increases dopamine and that sense of happiness and pride. And so that's all like a great foundational piece of thinking about how can I do this more. Like it grounds me in that sense of confidence to think about other projects where I need similar skills and how to apply them there.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. I hope everybody heard that loud and clear about what Ellen just said, not only on the brain science part, but the idea that we can build upon recognizing what we're doing well and take it further. And in a lot of circles, that's not a new idea anywhere. That's not a new idea under the sun. Let's build on what's working. But the reason we wanted to bring this to you today, friends, is that what we see in the world a lot of times is mechanisms for trying to correct what we think is broken or fix what we think is wrong about ourselves. And in better leadership circles or thinking circles about leadership think tanks, if you will, what we know is that we get 10 times more out of the efforts that we put into a thing when we build from what is strong, not from what is weak. And this is a centuries old concept, but we like this dialogue, this tool that we got from Brian, because it really allows us to actually have a conversational mechanism to uncover that. So,
I was going to say the other thing that we know, because we work a lot with scientists and engineers and people who are highly technical, is they tend to default, and this is again a normal brain thing, to looking for what's wrong and trying to fix it, right? So, a lot of risk analysis, when something happens in production and everything stops and we have to figure out a root cause analysis and figure out what was wrong so we don't repeat it. The converse is almost never true with those same folks, that they look for, we just succeeded wildly, and how do we take it apart and figure out what we did together, what we did as individuals that made that work. So we're always focusing on we're not talking about overlooking what's not working or what's wrong.
No, not at all. We definitely still need to, we still need to look at those things. We still need to identify like, wow, hey, here was a colossal error I made.
Yes. Well, and I think that the other thing is that many of us in our past are used to getting performance management reviews where the manager will say something along the lines of, you did this and this and this well, but let's focus now on the things that you need to improve for next year. And it
Yes.
skips right over
Yes.
the what you did well in a very sort of, you did this and then you met expectations.
Mhm.
It doesn't talk about what elements of you as a human were there that made those things possible that you could apply towards improving some of the things that need improvement next year, right? So it's almost like the switch gets flipped way too quickly towards what's wrong and how do we improve the things that are wrong. It works with machines, it doesn't work as well with people.
It doesn't work with people on many levels. So I'm curious also when we think about this from the point of view of people being able to take stock of their 2024
Mhm,
and their ability to do some look backs.
mhm.
What I would love to dare our audience to do, to have some fun, to partner up with someone on their team, maybe even their whole team. Ooh, if they really want to go out on a limb, gather like a group of 10 people and go hog wild with this idea of let's just like throw all of our successes out all over the place. Let's have a post-it mania holiday event. How fun would that be? Post-it
So
mania
fun.
holiday event, right? Like we're gonna grab all of the post-its, we're gonna grab all of the things that went well, and then we're gonna interview each other and we're gonna dig in and we're gonna dig in. And the thing that you could do if you wanted to is there's a thing worth noting about this particular approach, which is we as humans, we are often hesitant to own our successes in front of other humans. And the
Most
reason for
definitely.
that is, again, there's more brain science. And the brain science points to I need to make sure that I'm safe with my tribe, because if I'm too much of this or too much of that or too much of this or too much of that, I'm going to get kicked out of the tribe. I'm going to get kicked out of the cave. I'm going to be alone in the dark and I'm going to get eaten by something. So the explicit permission to say, I want to hear about how you caused this is an absolutely essential ingredient for you. So you'll notice if you go back and listen to this episode, you'll notice that when I was asking Ellen these questions, she was at ease answering them. And part of how we made that possible together was for me to just yes and whatever she said, to just say, yeah, like tell me more, help me understand how you did that. So she and I felt like she felt like it was okay for her to stand on her brag box and say, here's how I did this,
The other
which
thing
is
that I
very
noticed,
different than if I said, oh, well, it's good for you that you did that, but what about all this other stuff?
well, and the other thing, I'll give you credit too, because when I started out, I started talking about something that was this big. Like it
Mm,
started last year and it's still ongoing. And you really narrowed it down to what's one specific place where you won and what went into that. And so that's something that I would also say for all of you as you try this is instead of thinking globally, think smaller. Like
mm.
what's one thing that you specifically know that you drove or contributed to in a very meaningful way? And that could be building a relationship, that could be handling a performance review, that could be creating a new process. It could be a behavior that you decided to take on and you know that you've mastered it now.
You know
Like
what you made
there's
me think of, Ellen? You're
what's that?
making me think about the fact that very often when we are doing this exercise with each other on our team or with other teams that we are helping, there's this tendency to overlook what we're taking for granted.
Oh, most definitely.
Right.
And
So
that's yeah.
that's a drill down also that we're recommending to you. So, a couple of keys to the kingdom here. One, because we're winding down on time. So, one, uh, don't be global in terms of your thinking. Be willing to go small and shrink it down, shrink it down, shrink it down, narrow, 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 and you'll find so much gold. Two, explicit permission to just say what's true for you. Just hang up the judge in your head and say, this is my turn to take stock of the wins. And it's your turn as my conversation partner to absolutely give me explicit space and hold that space for me to stand in that excellence, that we can do that together as team members. So it's a really, let's elevate the whole mentality of the team when you do this exercise. I would say another key to success in this exercise, should you choose to do it, is make it fun, make it ridiculous. Like really when was the last time with your team that you went Post-it mania happiness together?
Like, here's all the
talk
great
about a
things we
year-end
caused this
party.
year. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and the thing is that now that we pulled out the one thing and you focused on it, I can also, from an introspection standpoint, look at how many other places in the things I've been successful in this year has that decision to like make time and being prepared for it, has that shown up as a key element in my own success, right? So,
Right.
catching myself doing something right, but then also noticing how often that contributes to and is part of my zone of genius. To use some terminology that I really love, is how often am I working in my zone of genius, and how do I figure out ways to duplicate that kind of success across the year and build on the things that I know I'm good at.
So what Ellen is pointing to is when you're doing Post-it Mania and you're capturing all of these great questions and these great wins, that's a piece you can add to the picture. You can add to, maybe the pink Post-its are the ones where you grab onto, hey, thematically, I'll pull one from Ellen. Said that she was managing her energy well and planning her day well so she could show up fully, right? Maybe there's a place where she can track that throughout. Maybe when you do that for you, those things that you're noticing as a theme and a repeated behavior go on the pink Post-it note. Maybe that pink Post-it note lands on your computer and you get to start your 2025 looking at that. Mm-hmm. I mean, how cool would it be to have that potent and powerful reminder of your own excellence right in front of you in that kind of just really energizing way? So, yeah.
I was going to say, well, that I think that puts a button on it.
Yeah.
This was a really fun conversation, and I look forward to more of these where we just really get to drill down on some of the skills that we know that make for success.
Yeah. Thanks for being the guinea pig today, Elle.
You're welcome.
And friends, go try this with your team and post it back on social media. Let us know what lands on your Post-its. Let us know what lands in your interview conversations. Share with us all the wins and all the specifics of how you caused your success this year. Talk soon.
Bye. The Manufacturing Shakeup is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.